Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking on a source that is, well, it's so powerful and so influential that its ideas really form the invisible backbone of modern business and a lot of our social interactions.
That's right.
We're diving deep into the foundations of what's been called human engineering, distilling the core wisdom from Dale Carnegie's landmark work on influence.
It's such an essential deep dive, I think, for anyone who's looking for that, that competitive edge. But the sheer scale of this book's impact is it's staggering.
It really is.
We're talking about over 15 million copies sold, translated into 36 languages. And it stayed relevant for almost a century through all kinds of technological and cultural shifts.
Which just proves that these aren't just tips, right? They're almost like laws of human physics.
Exactly.
And our mission for you, the learner, is simple: to help you rapidly gain insight into these foundational rules of interaction and influence, the stuff that really underpins all of Carnegie's teachings. We aren't just, reading a summary here.
Yeah.
We're going to analyze why these principles work and how you can apply them in a world that's frankly very different from the one in which they were written.
And to really understand the weight of these principles, I think we have to start with the moment that kind of elevated this material from just self-help into a form of essential professional training.
Right.
This wasn't built on philosophical ideas.
Mm-hmm.
It was built on hard, quantifiable research.
Okay, let's unpack that, because we often talk about the importance of technical skills, right?
Yeah.
Especially today. But the research Carnegie commissioned, first through the Carnegie Foundation and then confirmed by the Carnegie Institute of Technology, it painted a completely different picture of success.
It's a revelation that, even today, it kind of defies our gut instinct. The investigators, they looked at these highly specialized technical careers, specifically engineering.
Right, so you'd think success there is all about calculus, physics, the hard science.
You would naturally expect success in engineering to correlate directly with, being a genius at all that complex technical stuff.
Formulas, blueprints, the hard 15% of the job, maybe.
Exactly. But the findings were just astonishingly counterintuitive. The research revealed that even in these highly technical fields, a massive 85% of one's financial success.
85? That's huge.
Right. It wasn't attributed to technical knowledge. It was attributed to skill in human engineering.
So things like personality, your ability to communicate, to lead people.
That's it. All of that. And only 15% was due to the technical mastery.
85%. That's a monumental return on investment for skills that are so often just brushed off as soft skills.
It is.
It forces you to completely reframe what professional competence even means. It suggests that mastering the subtle art of conversation is actually the primary driver of your career.
That means if you are technically brilliant, but you're just inept at handling a conversation or giving feedback or motivating a team, your potential is, it's severely limited.
So this deep dive isn't just about being nice.
No, not at all. It's about acquiring the critical 85% skill set you need for advancement and leadership.
What gives these principles so much weight is that they weren't developed in some library. They were developed in a laboratory of human relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that process.
Yeah, this is what separates Carnegie from, pretty much every other self-help guru. He treated the classroom, the human interaction, like a scientific experiment. These principles aren't just hypotheses.
They were tested.
They grew out of 15 years of practical experimentation and refinement with thousands of adults in his courses. People would go out, try a principle, come back, report the results, and together they'd refine the rule until it was just universally applicable.
A real-time feedback loop is fascinating. But the prep work, the research before that, was just as rigorous, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Carnegie hired a trained researcher for a year and a half, tasked them with just plowing through psychology, philosophy, hundreds of articles, countless biographies.
Looking for what exactly?
For every practical idea used throughout history for winning friends and influencing people. They studied everyone: Julius Caesar, Thomas Edison. Our sources highlight that they read over 100 biographies of Theodore Roosevelt alone.
Over 100 biographies just of Roosevelt. That's some serious dedication.
It is. They were determined to ground these rules in the actual successful practices of history's greatest leaders. It just reinforces this idea that these principles are timeless.
And the application was immediate. There's that example of the employer with over 300 staff members who was just habitually critical.
Right, and once he started applying these principles, he turned those, 314 enemies into friends? His employees, who used to literally look the other way when he walked by, started calling him by his first name.
That shows the transformation, doesn't it? From a climate of fear to one of genuine connection. And it gave him more profit, more leisure, and just more happiness.
It really did.
Which sets the perfect stage for our first part. The 3 fundamental techniques in handling people. These are the absolute non-negotiables.
That's right. If you fail at these 3, nothing else we talk about today is going to work. These are the prerequisites.
Okay, let's dive into that bedrock. Principle number 1.
Principle number 1 is, don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
It sounds so simple, but it's often the hardest rule to follow, especially when we feel, completely justified.
Oh, yes.
So why is suppressing that urge to criticize the absolute first step?
Because criticism is just inherently destructive to any process of change. Carnegie is crystal clear on this. Criticism is futile because it puts the other person on the defensive instantly.
So they immediately start trying to justify themselves.
Which is the exact opposite of what you want. And more dangerously, it wounds their pride, it hurts their sense of importance, which we'll get into. It's the deepest human driver. And it just arouses resentment.
So even if your criticism is 100% accurate, the moment you deliver it, the other person just stops hearing the facts.
Yep. They start marshaling their defenses. It becomes an emotional fight, not a logical one. We are creatures of emotion, driven by vanity and pride. We're not creatures of pure logic.
And the psychological fallout just outweighs any benefit.
By far. The researcher Hans Sly observed, as much as we thirst for approval, we dread condemnation. Criticism just doesn't create lasting, positive change. It only creates resentment that can linger for years.
That explains why the memory of a slight can last so much longer than a compliment. And the sources give these powerful historical examples, like Lincoln after the Battle of Gettysburg.
Lincoln was, he was under immense pressure, and he was furious that General Meade, after winning this huge victory, allowed General Lee's defeated army to just escape.
He thought the war could have ended right then and there.
Exactly. He drafted this furious, stinging letter just listing all of Meade's colossal errors.
But he didn't send it. And that moment of restraint, that's where the lesson is.
He paused. And he realized that sending the letter, it would only relieve his feelings, his frustration. But what would it actually accomplish?
Nothing good for the war effort.
Right. The letter would force Meade to defend himself, to condemn Lincoln's judgment in return, and crucially, it would impair Meade's future usefulness as a commander. Lincoln had learned from bitter experience that sharp criticisms almost always end in futility. He chose silence.
That's masterful. He was prioritizing the utility of his commander over his own emotional release. He's asking, is this criticism for the problem or for my ego?
And you see the same restraint in Mark Twain. Twain was legendary for his temper. He'd often write these furious little letters to people who had crossed him.
But his wife, Olivia, she played the silent protector.
She did. She would secretly intercept the letters. Twain got the emotional release he needed just by writing it down, but the harm was contained.
So the lesson is, if you have to vent, make sure the condemnation never actually hits its target.
Precisely. And the cost of that rebuke is shown in Carnegie's own personal story with Richard Harding Davis. A small act of vanity on Carnegie's part led to resentment that lasted a decade.
What happened there?
Carnegie, trying to seem important, added, "dictated but not read," to a short letter he wrote. Davis sent it back with this scathing note. "Your bad manners are exceeded only by your bad manners."
Ouch.
Yeah. Carnegie admitted he deserved it, but he resented it so deeply that 10 years later, when he read that Davis had died, that hurt was the first thing that came to his mind. The lesson is brutal. A stinging criticism, even if it's justified, can rankle for decades.
It makes the cost of being right just too high. So if we can't criticize, what's the practical alternative?
The shift has to be away from condemnation and toward focusing on the other person's interests. Look at George B. Johnston, the safety coordinator trying to get construction workers to wear hard hats.
At first, he was just ordering them, threatening them.
And it didn't work. They'd put them on when he was there, take them off when he left. So he changed his approach entirely. Instead of ordering them, he started asking if the hats were uncomfortable.
In a pleasant tone.
In a pleasant conversational tone. And crucially, he reminded them that the hat was designed to protect them from injury. He focused on the benefit to the worker.
So he turned it from a confrontation about rules into a shared concern for safety.
Exactly. And the result was better compliance with no resentment because he eliminated the criticism and focused purely on the other person's gain.
So if we eliminate criticism, what do we replace it with? That brings us to the most powerful lever of influence. Principle number 2.
Give honest and sincere appreciation. This is what Carnegie calls the big secret of dealing with people. If you can't force people to do things through criticism, there is only one way to get anyone to do anything.
And that is,
By making the other person want to do it.
and to make someone want to do something, you have to tap into that deepest human driver.
Absolutely. Thinkers have debated what drives us for centuries. Freud pointed to, the sex urge and the desire to be great. But the philosopher John Dewey phrased it more precisely. He said the deepest urge in human nature is the desire to be important.
The desire for significance, to be recognized.
It's that constant gnawing hunger we all feel, and it's one of the few human wants that is not consistently gratified in most people's lives. We crave it.
So if a leader can consistently deliver that feeling of importance, they have the single greatest tool for loyalty and motivation. This is what made people like Charles Schwab so successful.
Schwab's genius wasn't in making steel. He had people who were technically better than him at that. His genius was in handling people. He summed it up perfectly. He said, "I am anxious to praise, but loath to find fault. If I like anything, I am hearty in my approbation and lavish in my praise."
Which is the complete opposite of the average person, right?
Right.
We usually only speak up when we dislike something.
Exactly. And that silence just kills ambition. Schwab believed nothing kills ambition faster than criticism from a superior. Even Andrew Carnegie, his mentor, wanted his epitaph to read, "Here lies one who knew how to get around him, men who were cleverer than himself." He appreciated talent, and he showed it.
What's fascinating is that this appreciation works even when there's a failure. The example of John D. Rockefeller and his partner Edward Bedford.
Bedford made a colossal mistake. He lost $1 million for the firm on a bad investment. Rockefeller could have been merciless.
But he wasn't.
No. He looked at the situation and realized Bedford had tried his best and, in the process, had actually managed to save 60% of the money.
So Rockefeller reframed the whole thing.
He focused purely on the positive part. He congratulated Bedford, saying, "That's splendid, Edward. We don't always do as well as that upstairs." He turned a disciplinary meeting into a moment of encouragement and loyalty building.
The power of this is just immense. We saw that heartbreaking study about runaway wives, the main reason they left.
A lack of appreciation. It's a universal problem in all relationships. People take those closest to them for granted. They only notice the cooking when it's bad or the house when it's a mess.
But we have to draw a clear line here. What's the difference between sincere appreciation and just flattery?
It's a crucial difference. Flattery is counterfeit. It's selfish, insincere. It comes from the teeth out, The flatterer is only thinking about what they can get out of it.
And people can usually spot it a mile away.
Discerning people can, yes. Genuine appreciation, on the other hand, is unselfish. It comes from the heart out. It requires you to actually stop, analyze what the other person did, and articulate a specific, honest recognition of their value.
Like the manager, Pamela Dunham, with the janitor who was doing a poor job.
Criticism failed completely. But when she genuinely praised him for one particularly good job he did on a specific task, his whole attitude and performance changed. He became a dedicated worker. That's the difference sincerity makes.
It can literally be life-changing, like in the story of Stevie Wonder.
Indeed. A young Stevie, already blind, was struggling. He had this incredible musical talent, but it wasn't until a teacher specifically praised his unique and talented ears that he felt seen.
That's amazing.
And that genuine act of recognition, delivered sincerely, was, in his own words, the beginning of a new life.
So we've built the foundation, no criticism, generous appreciation. Now how do we channel that into action? Principle 3 is to arouse in the other person an eager want.
This is the strategic core of all persuasion. It forces you to stop talking about yourself entirely. Carnegie uses that unforgettable analogy of going fishing.
Right. He loves strawberries and cream.
But when he goes fishing, he baits his hook with worms. Because that's what the fish wants, not his dessert.
It sounds like common sense, but we ignore it constantly. We just talk about what we want.
That's the default. The only way to influence people is to talk about what they want and then show them how doing what you suggest will help them get it.
The question always comes up, though. Isn't this just manipulation?
The line is drawn by your intention and the outcome. Manipulation is self-serving. Influence, as Carnegie teaches it, is about finding that intersection where your want aligns with their want, creating a mutually beneficial outcome.
And that story of Ralph Waldo Emerson and the calf in the barn just illustrates this perfectly.
It's the classic mistake. They're focused only on their own goal. Emerson is pushing, his son is pulling, and the calf, feeling that resistance, just stiffens its legs and refuses to move.
Stalemate.
Complete stalemate. But the Irish housemaid, she had more practical calf sense. She didn't use force. She put her finger in the calf's mouth, let it suck on it.
Satisfying an instinctive need.
Exactly. And then she gently led him into the barn. She made the calf want to follow. The lesson is, before you try to persuade anyone, you have to pause and ask, how can I make this person want to do it?
Andrew Carnegie himself did this with his nephews who weren't writing home.
He bet he could get a reply by return mail without even asking them to write. He sent them a chatty letter, and in the postscript, he casually mentioned he was sending each of them a $5 bill. But he forgot to actually enclose the money.
So he created a vacuum of want?
Absolutely. Their eager want for the $5 completely overrode their apathy about writing. Back came replies, thanking dear Uncle Andrew, and, subtly inquiring about the cash.
It's the ultimate redirection of energy. And it works with kids, too, like Stan Novak's son, Tim, who refused to go to kindergarten.
Scolding didn't work. Stan realized he was only focused on his problem. So he and his wife started making a list of all the fun things Tim would do at kindergarten. Finger painting, singing, and they started doing them at the kitchen table.
And when Tim begged to join in,
Stan used the strategic refusal. Oh, no! You have to go to kindergarten first to learn how. This created an intense, eager want in Tim. He went from a screaming protester to a kid who couldn't wait to go to school.
this principle works even in tough business negotiations, like when Carnegie had to negotiate a rent reduction.
He walked in and immediately removed his own ego from the equation. He started by acknowledging the hotel manager's interests. He spent no time complaining about his own financial problems.
He only talked about the advantages and disadvantages to the hotel manager.
Precisely, the advantages of him leaving. The ballroom would be free for other events. The disadvantages? The manager would lose a steady income stream, and critically, all the valuable advertising his lectures brought to the hotel.
By the time he was done, he'd convinced the manager that raising the rent was bad for the manager's own business.
And he got the rent reduced by 50% without ever mentioning his own wants. This is why Henry Ford said the secret of success is the ability to get the other person's point of view.
Okay, moving on to part 3. We shift from persuasion to the art of attraction, how to cultivate genuine, lasting goodwill.
And we begin with principle 1, become genuinely interested in other people.
This sounds almost too simple, but the evidence shows most of us fail at it. We're usually trying to get interest, not give it.
The dog's instinct is the perfect model here. A dog is just completely overjoyed to see you. You can make more friends in 2 months by being interested in others than you can in 2 years trying to get others interested in you.
And we're just so self-absorbed. That New York telephone company study, the most frequently used word in 500 calls.
The first-person pronoun, I, used almost 4,000 times. We look for our own picture first in a group photo. It's just human nature.
But being genuinely interested is the shortcut to loyalty, like with the sales rep, Edward Sykes.
Sykes was successful not just because of his products. He took the time and effort to say hello and show genuine interest in the soda clerk and the sales clerk at the store.
The people who were gatekeepers of goodwill, even if they weren't the decision makers.
Exactly. When the owner was about to drop his product line, the soda clerk spoke up for him. The owner was so impressed by this loyalty from subordinates that he kept the account and gave Sykes a double order.
Principle 2 is universal. Smile. Charles Schwab credited his success and his smile almost equally.
A sincere smile communicates non-verbally everything we've been talking about. It says, I like you, you make me happy, I'm glad to see you. It's an instant, non-verbal expression of appreciation.
And what about when you're not face-to-face? The telephone companies figured this out.
They teach the concept of the unseen smile. They tell their employees to smile while on the phone because that smile comes through in your voice.
That's practical power. Your disposition matters more than the words themselves.
Which brings us to principle 3, the cornerstone of the personal touch. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language.
Forgetting a name or mispronouncing it, it just instantly says you don't care enough to recognize the individual.
But recalling it is a subtle and powerful compliment. Think of Jim Farley, who worked for FDR. He had an incredible memory for names. He wrote thousands of personalized letters. Dear Bill, Dear Jane, all signed simply Jim. He understood that recalling a voter's name is statesmanship.
And that story of the salesman Sid Levy and the customer, Nicodemus Papadoulos.
Oh, it's so powerful. Most people just called him Nick. But Levi made a special effort to learn the full, difficult Greek name. And when he greeted him with it, "Good afternoon, Mr. Nicodemus Papadoulos," the customer froze.
And started crying.
Tears rolled down his cheeks. He told Levy that in 15 years in the country, nobody had ever bothered to call him by his right name. That effort resulted in deep, instant loyalty.
So remembering a name isn't just a gift. It's a focused, deliberate technique.
It is. Napoleon III, he would repeat the name, ask for the spelling, write it down to get an eye impression. It takes effort. As Emerson said, good manners are made up of petty sacrifices.
All right, now we move from the personal touch to the dynamics of conversation itself. Principle 4 seems a bit counterintuitive for an ambitious person.
Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves.
Right, it seems like you should be the one talking.
But this is one of the highest forms of flattery, the flattery of rapt, sympathetic attention. When you genuinely focus on someone, you are validating their experiences.
And this principle is a powerful safety valve when dealing with difficult people. Like the New York Telephone Company's troubleshooter and that notoriously vicious customer.
The troubleshooter strategy was simply rapt attention and sympathetic listening. He didn't argue the facts. He just listened to the customer's furious tirade for nearly 3 hours over 4 meetings.
He gave the customer exactly what he craved, a feeling of importance.
Exactly. By the 4th meeting, the issue was closed. The customer paid his bills in full. His real need wasn't about the phone bill. It was a desperate desire for importance. Once that need was met, his grievances just vanished.
This need for a listener is universal, isn't it? Even Lincoln, when he was deciding about freeing the slaves, called an old friend to Washington.
And he talked for hours, reviewing the arguments, reading letters. After all that, he shook his friend's hand and sent him home without even asking for his opinion. Lincoln just needed a friendly, sympathetic listener to clarify his own thoughts.
Which leads perfectly to the next principle, number 5. Talk in terms of the other person's interests. If you've listened well, you know what those are.
This moves beyond sympathy into true engagement. Theodore Roosevelt mastered this. If he was expecting a visitor, he would stay up late the night before, reading up on whatever subject he knew his guest was interested in.
He was doing his homework. He wasn't just relying on charm.
He knew the royal road to a person's heart is to talk about the things they treasure most. We see this with Edward Chalif, who needed a big donation for the Boy Scouts.
He knew he couldn't just walk in and start talking about his own needs.
No. He learned the corporation president had a framed, canceled $1 million check on his wall. So the first thing Chalif did was ask to see the check, admiring it, encouraging the president to tell him all about that accomplishment.
He spent the opening minutes appreciating the president's proudest moment.
The president was delighted. After a long, warm talk about himself, he finally asked, "Oh, by the way, what was it you wanted?" The result. The president sent 5 boys on the trip, gave Chalif a letter of credit, and even met them in Paris.
That's incredible. He earned the right to ask.
He did. The same thing saved Henry Duvernoy, the baker, after 4 years of failing to sell bread to a hotel manager. He finally learned the manager's passion was being president of the Hotel Greeters of America.
So his next visit.
0 discussion of bread. 30 minutes talking about the Greeters organization. Days later, the hotel steward called him. The manager was completely sold on him, and he got the account.
All right, now for the final part. Techniques for winning people to your way of thinking and leading them without conflict.
And we have to start with the most difficult one for competitive people. Principle 1. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it.
This seems so frustrating if you have the facts on your side. Why should you back away from an argument?
Because an argument, even if you win, costs you goodwill. And you can rarely have both. Ben Franklin said it best. You may achieve a victory, but it will be a hollow one. You can't change someone's mind if you wound their pride.
The salesman, Patrick O'Hare, learned this the hard way.
He was losing sales because he was winning arguments. So he completely inverted his approach. When a buyer would say a competitor's truck was better, O'Hare would agree instantly. "The Hoosin! It is a good truck. You'll never make a mistake if you buy it."
He just removed all ground for argument.
And the buyer was instantly speechless. Then O'Hare could smoothly shift to talking about the positive points of his truck, not as a rebuttal, but as an alternative. He became a star salesman.
So on to principle 3. This is the noble path to de-escalation.
If you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Any fool can try to defend their mistakes, and most fools do. But admitting mistakes raises you above the herd.
The story of Carnegie and the mounted policeman is the perfect example of this. He was caught letting his dog run loose, which was illegal,
If he had argued, the policeman would have been forced to assert his authority. Instead, Carnegie admitted he was wrong, quickly and emphatically condemning himself before the policeman even could.
He stole the policeman's thunder.
He did. The policeman's only remaining way to satisfy his self-esteem was to be magnanimous and show mercy. He instantly softened and said, "Just let the dog run over the hill where I can't see him, and we'll forget all about it."
He went from facing a fine to getting permission to break the law. That's the ultimate de-escalation.
It is. It transforms a potential enemy into a supporter. Robert E. Lee did this on the biggest stage possible after Pickett's charge at Gettysburg. He blamed only himself for the failure. That act cemented his men's loyalty.
Principle 4 shifts us back to starting interactions correctly.
Begin in a friendly way. This goes back to Lincoln's maxim: a drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall. If you want to win someone to your cause, first convince them that you're their sincere friend.
John D. Rockefeller Jr. used this in the most hostile environment imaginable, addressing striking Colorado miners who literally wanted him hanged.
The air was thick with hatred, but Rockefeller addressed them with a masterpiece of friendly rhetoric. "I am proud to be here. We meet here not as strangers, but as friends."
He didn't jump into facts. He established a mutual humanity first.
He won a host of admirers immediately. The strikers went back to work without another word about the wage increase they had been fighting for. Gentleness and friendliness are always stronger than fury and force.
Once that friendly foundation is set, we move into the subtle, advanced techniques of leadership.
We start with a tiny linguistic shift in Principle 2. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly.
This is all about the difference between and versus but. We often try to soften criticism by starting with praise, followed by but.
And the but just negates everything that came before it. You've done a great job, but all they hear is the criticism.
So by replacing but with and,
you maintain the sincerity of the praise while encouraging improvement. You've done a great job. And by continuing those efforts, your algebra can be up there with everything else. It suggests improvement without condemnation.
Marge Jacob, with the messy construction workers, used this so well.
She didn't criticize. She and her kids just cleaned up the mess. The next morning, she praised the foreman. "I'm really pleased with how clean the lawn was left last night."
She praised the behavior she wanted to see, indirectly setting the expectation.
And from that day on, the workers picked up their debris.
Now for Principle 7. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. This is pure psychological engineering.
If you want to improve someone, act as though that trait were already one of their outstanding characteristics. Shakespeare said, "Assume a virtue if you have it not." They'll make huge efforts not to disappoint you.
Henry Hink used this with his underperforming mechanic Bill.
Instead of criticizing, he called him in and praised his past competence. "Bill, you are a fine mechanic." Only then did he gently suggest that his recent work wasn't up to Bill's own established standards.
He challenged Bill's pride in his competence.
And Bill immediately assured him he'd improve, because he wanted to live up to that high reputation Hank had given him.
Finally, we arrive at Principle 9. Making people glad to do what you want. This is the culmination of everything.
It's about aligning your desires with their emotional needs. When we invite someone to act, we have to frame it so they feel important, or so it serves their self-interest.
Like Colonel House telling William Jennings Bryan he was too important to be the peace emissary.
Exactly. He frames the denial as an exaltation of status. Bryan was too important and would attract too much attention. Bryan was completely satisfied. He was denied the request, but given a massive psychological boost.
That's why Napoleon said men are ruled by toys, titles, honors.
Right. The store manager, Gunter Schmidt, had an employee who was negligent with price tags. Criticism failed, so he gave her a new, impressive title: Supervisor of Price Tag Posting for the entire store.
And her attitude changed completely.
It did. The new responsibility and title provided the recognition she craved and made her glad to do the work. It's about knowing what you want them to do, being empathetic, and matching the benefits to their wants.
It's not about trickery. It's about acknowledging that human motivation isn't purely rational. If you can increase your success by just 10% using these principles, you become 10% more effective as a leader.
We've covered a lot today, but if we distill it all down, the entire edifice of influence rests on those 3 fundamental techniques. Don't criticize, give sincere appreciation, and always arouse an eager warmth.
Those are the bedrocks.
Yes.
And they require a radical shift from focusing on I to genuinely focusing on you. Professor William James put the challenge into perspective, reminding us of the untapped power we all possess.
James observed, Compared with what we ought to be, we are only half awake. We are making use of only a small part of our physical and mental resources. We have this profound ability, but we default to our own self-centered thinking.
And to turn this knowledge into a real skill, you have to engage in conscious, consistent effort, the kind of weekly self-analysis.
Exactly. We'll leave you with a method used by a hugely successful self-made financier. He kept an engagement book, and every Saturday evening, he'd go off by himself and review all the interviews and contacts he had that week.
And he'd ask himself 3 really piercing questions about his own performance.
What mistakes did I make that time? What did I do that was right? And in what way could I have improved my performance? What lessons can I learn from that experience?
That weekly review, year after year, developed his ability to make sharp decisions, and it helped him enormously in all his contacts with people.
That self-analysis, checking up on your conscious application of these principles, that's the true path to developing that critical 85% skill in human engineering.
So start that self-analysis today. What mistakes did you make this week, and how can you better bait the hook next time? Keep learning, keep listening, and keep applying these principles.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.